Dinners at Grandma's are always delicious. We'd love to know her secret.
Best chef I know.
Matching a brand's visual look and feel is a very difficult task as a cinematographer. Any successful branded commercial has a specific aesthetic and consistency across all their campaigns. So how do you even create work for your favorite brand that gets you hired? In this video, I'm going to show you how I shot a Spec commercial for McDonald's. I'm going to be going over how you plan a project like this and show you exactly how we shot it. When you watch a commercial, you may not realize it, but subconsciously, your mind is telling you what exactly this commercial is for. This is because large brands have full-on creative teams that keep their commercials consistent as well as with a certain look and feel. Nike, Adidas, McDonald's, and so many other brands like this all have commercials that have their own look. This complements their brand identity and ultimately dictates how they want you to feel. The main way that you can start getting work from these big brands is start creating work for yourself that exactly aligns with their brand's identity. To do this, I'm going to cover a part of the pre-production process of establishing a look and feel that aligns with a brand's identity and how you can exactly work with a director as a cinematographer. And the way we're going to be doing that is diving into our favorite organizational tool, especially for the pre-production process, which is Milanote. So this was kind of a different job in terms of not a tenfold job. I was hired as a director of photography to work on this as a collaborative effort. And this was mainly brought to me as a challenge by my partner. She was the director of this film, and she had this amazing idea of creating a McDonald's commercial for the work that she wanted to get hired for. And the main thing that we're going to start off with is the director's references, their mood board, and basically them aligning with the brand and then wanting to push their own look. I was basically given all these references, and a lot of these are from McDonald's commercials specifically. So if you're looking to make a commercial for a specific brand, look at all the work that they've done and see what other pieces of references and any other pieces of content that aligns with that brand as well. So you can see here in some of the McDonald's commercials, there's a specific color palette and it's very warm and very glowy as well as yellow. This is another McDonald's commercial as well. Even though this is nighttime, there's always some resemblance between the two. And then she had a bunch of different other references from other commercials that align with that. So once you're aligned with what it's supposed to feel like, the references really do come easy. And then myself as a cinematographer, I was tasked to come up with a visual board. I basically got notes from the client, I got notes from the director, and they're like, okay, we want to see your references now. So this was just a great place just to put down all our ideas and just throw everything together as well as all the references down here. And this was like maybe the second or third time where I've shot a commercial like this, where everything is planned to the T, where you have a specific shot list, it is followed completely, and this is what the edit is going to be looking like. So this was basically going through our shots. We have the VO of the kid as well as the narrator and what the camera movements are supposed to look like. And what I love about Milanote that you can use GIFs as well as you can use stills to really showcase what you're going for. The director in this case put a lot of her references of camera movement, and then we were going back and forth of what these transitions were supposed to look like. So I would send her some videos and she would send some back, and then we would pull certain things from those videos and then put them back. So this storyboard evolved as we went because there's some pictures from the location scout of where some of these shots would come in. But basically, if you look at all these shots and just the general visual reference of what we're trying to create, which is a McDonald's commercial, everything pretty much aligns from camera movement to colors and key props that we're using. I was really challenged in this commercial to really push the commercial look from lighting all the way to camera movements, especially camera movements scene by scene. So there was a lot of different setups between dollies on a Ronin 2, and this was a very interesting one for me, really pushing my boundaries as a cinematographer, something that I'm very happy with. The first shot we're going to start off with here is the most complicated, a room that was very interesting to light. As obviously, if you look at this room, there's a lot going on from the light bulbs that you can see all over the room, the window in the back, and then how we lit our subject specifically, as well as how we developed contrast on our subject. Going into this first scene, we really have to ask ourselves what the commercial is supposed to be. And this is from basically when school ends, which is around 4:30 or 5 o'clock when she gets home. And it's supposed to feel like that whimsical, like the sun is setting, I'm excited to go home and I'm about to spend the weekend with somebody or somewhere. So that's the feeling, exact feeling they wanted to go. They wanted to be very orange, they wanted to be very glowy and aligning with McDonald's colors, which is the yellow warmth. And I really had to dial in where this scene is supposed to sit in the edit and really focus on continuity in terms of how this commercial is going to progress throughout the day. And this is something very important as a cinematographer with aligning before each scene, and this really helps you set your color temperatures as well as your camera's initial white balance so you don't really get messed up in the post-production process. So we shot this on the Sony Venice, and then because this is supposed to feel like daytime as well as the sun is starting to set, I could set my white balance to something very neutral. In this case, it was 5600 Kelvin, because I still wanted the daylight to be outside pretty neutral and then bring in some warmth with the use of my lights. And this was shot on a 25mm lens, and we're using the Zeiss Supreme primes here. So I primarily shot this on a 25, 35, and an 18mm, and we didn't really go any longer than that, other than like a probe lens, which was a 24mm as well. And we can really start now diving into what we use for lighting. We're gonna start with a top down of the room, and there's the window that we have here, and then also another window here. And I'm going to start with my exterior lights because this is what I usually like to place, and then I like to place in my other lights. So we have a 1200D here, and then in front of that I actually have a silk flag, which is 1.5 stops. And what that is basically doing is spreading out the light on here. And this is a big question and something that you have to talk with your director. What is this supposed to feel like? Do you want rays of sun coming through? Or do we not have a location that allows something like that? It was kind of a toss-up between the two, and then we had the 1200D sparked, and you could really see it as a sourcey basically point, and maybe it could be the sun in the sky, but it didn't really make sense in terms of all our lighting directions as well. So I had a conversation with the director and said, hey, what happens if I flood this completely, spreading all this light out, and the window just looks overexposed, but a lot of light is coming from there. And we tried that, and it's ultimately something that we're really happy with. We have another window here, which I had primarily blacked out. So 3/4 of the window, I just had an 8x8, really blocking that out. But then we really liked some of the little daylight spilling through here, so we had some of that, and I knew this was going to be a really short shot. And outside of that window, I have a 600X, and I actually have 2 of them. And then one was with a spotlight, and this one had a Fresnel. And then basically a spotlight allows you really to focus the light, and then a Fresnel allows you to control it having a wider or tighter beam angle. And then these were 600Xs, so this allows me to really control the light. Having something that is not 2700 Kelvin, but really dialing in like tones like orange, so you can get those really sunsetty feels and everything like that. So the spotlight was actually aimed down and giving and providing some levels on the room here, highlighting with the streaks and everything that's going on. And then 600X with the Fresnel was actually adding a bunch of light and interest back onto this fireplace. We felt the fireplace was a little too dark in terms of the lights that we had in the room, so we had to basically amp that up, shooting through a set of shears that were on there, and it just gave a bunch of texture and levels back to this fireplace. Having that little sliver of daylight coming through, you can see that mixed color temperature in terms of the X with the orange light here, and then the actual daylight coming here, which is pushed pretty neutral just because of our camera's white balance. And then if we look at percentage wise as well as colors, we just had these set to a general orange. I believe the spotlight was at 100% because we really wanted to focus this and really lift that side. And so those are my exterior lights. I know I like to place those first, but the lights on the side we kind of added as a forethought. But my main key light here is actually Amaran F22C. And then I have this set to 2700 Kelvin. And this has the double diffusion as well as the grid on that to really control the spill, because we're dealing with a wide scene here, and I really want to light my main talent, which is the grandma here, as well as when the granddaughter comes in. And I didn't want the lights spilling all over the room, so that's why I had the grid and really concentrated on what I'm aimed at in front of. So we had this basically boomed out overhead here, and it's honestly like at a 45-degree angle, so it's lighting her and giving her that nice warmth that we feel there. And this was sitting around 60%. So those are the main fixtures we had in play, but the room was still missing something. Just wasn't feeling the warmth that we wanted on the bookshelf, as well as the cases making this feel full. And what we did is we added a aperture. So this is a Nova P300, and we set it to the same orange tones as we have here. We basically laid it on the floor and shot that directly up, but we didn't have any barn doors. So what we did is we wrapped the side and edges in Cinefoil. So Cinefoil is basically like aluminum foil, but it's black. And this allows you to really shape lights in a pinch, and you rip off a piece and you put it around. And the reason why we did that is because we didn't want that orange color spilling all over everything here, and be very obviously that we put a light back there just to lift the room. So I directed the light straight up and shaped it straight up so we can have more orange lift in the back of the room. The director really wanted to add little pockets of light and stuff that you wouldn't normally see. And a big one here is this light that you see on the bookcase. This was something that I normally wouldn't do, but she was like, hey, we need some interest in the back. So I'm like, give me a second, see what I can do. And what I did is I had a NAND light 6 dB, and this was aimed directly and shaped like a triangle at this shelf here. And we set this to 2700 Kelvin, and this was lifting that bookshelf and just giving a purposeful highlight to it to add even more interest and pop into this. So it didn't feel completely natural, but it felt unnatural in terms of the lift and look that we're trying to create. And there was actually one light that I forgot that was sitting right here. And this was another Aperture 600X. And this was basically acting as my ambient room tone. And I shot this right up into the ceiling. And this was sitting up at like 5%. So this is the 600X as well. So that was because my front of the room was feeling a little too dark. And this was just to lift it in general. That's just a light I remember now. Now we can get into the fun part. And what I mean by that is adding little pockets of light. And I love to do this with B7Cs, which are those little light bulbs that you see that everybody uses. You can't see here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in play here. Yes, so there's 5 of those bulbs in play. And then again, we set them to an orange color. And why are they on doesn't really make sense because we have so much light from the natural, but it's a commercial. It doesn't necessarily need to make sense. And then the director really wanted something in the fireplace. It doesn't necessarily have to look like a fire, but I want some orange in there to really help accentuate this, really feel unworldly and homey. So we have 2 MCs in here. And then luckily the fireplace is metal, so I just stuck them to the back of that. And then we did set them to a fire effect, and we had these at 100%. You can see that it's pretty harsh. And usually I would just throw a softbox on these things and then put them into wherever I want. But because the fireplace was black and dark itself, there wasn't a lot to work with in terms of bouncing it off something or diffusing it. So I just popped them in there and put them pretty harsh. And then in front of here, there's like a metal chainmail thing, and it's acting basically as a grid, and it's really killing the spill, and it's really localizing the lights that are in there and really giving you that feel of that warmth, but it's not too much where it's overpowering. If you had an actual fire in there, what that looks like, fire is so bright, especially with the camera we're working with, the Venice, it doesn't have the dynamic range to see that. So we kind of faked that, and we kind of tricked the mind in terms of what that's supposed to feel like. Oh, looks like there's a fire on. You don't really look past that, because your main attention is going to the blocking of the characters and everything like that. When I look at this, I'm very pleased with the amount of contrast that I have in my subject. I know this is very small, but you can see that we have some shadow on the side of her face, but this is a very low contrast ratio, and this feels very commercial. And then you can see that she's so separated from everything else because she has so much light coming from behind her. The right side of her face, she has that 1200D with all that light from the background. And then on the other side of her, behind her head, she has those little aperture bulbs that are even separating her more. When you light these wide scenes, it's really easy to get into the trap of how am I supposed to add contrast into this? This is really playing with your lighting directions and really dialing in of how you naturally play with the room. I knew I had a really dark side of the left side of the room, so I'm going to play with all my shadows on that side. I look at my room and say, what's acting as a natural neg? In that case, it was that whole wall as well as fireplace. The next shot that we're going to quickly break down is the next shot in this sequence, which is her delivering her line directly to camera. And I love the look of wide lenses, especially with full frame cameras. I know you can achieve this look with Super 35, but this really gives you that full frame pop. So again, this was on the Venice, and we're using the Zeiss Supreme primes. Nothing really changed, the same white balance and everything like that, but we are now shooting on an 18mm. And we're being very intentional with her leaning in and delivering these direct lines with a super wide lens. I get this question a lot as a cinematographer, especially when shooting at specific T or f stops, and these lenses stop down to 1.8, but for this scene specifically, I was shooting at a 2.8, and this was because of her leaning in. You can see some of the focus shifting towards her, obviously because that's a large distance she has to go into, But the focus plane here is her and the daughter, and then we really want to focus on her with her line delivery with the actors blocking to supplement what she's supposed to be feeling. A lot of people are like, I want to shoot on 1.3 or 1.8. But that doesn't really give you the look that you're going for. I want the whole subject's face in focus. I just don't want the nose. I just don't want the eyes. I want the whole thing. And this really helps shooting commercial like this and not having the mindset of like, I have this nice expensive glass. I gotta use it till its full ability. Because its full ability really is 1 stop or 2 stops below its maximum aperture. And that gives you that nice sharpness, the crispness across the image. So this is the same lighting setup here, but we just had to change a few things to add contrast as well as bring in the key a little bit more so we can get more interest in her face. So my main key light here is that Amaran F22C, and that is with the grid as well as double diffuse. So F22C, and this is set to 2700 Kelvin. So you notice that the lights I use outside is a mixture of daylight as well as that orange. And I really wanted to keep my key light of not keying with an orange light. I really like to keep it to CCT colors. And this is just something I really like because if you mix in like colors with this, it gets really messy. And especially with darker skin tones, 2700 Kelvin is almost always the way to go. And if we look at her face, there's a lot of contrast. And this is both color contrast as well as light and dark contrast. So if we just look at that light and dark, we have that key light source coming in here, and it's giving nice highlights to her face, and it's also very soft. And I forgot in front of that, I actually had that silk that I always use, and this is giving me 1.5 stops. This is my favorite shot in the piece, and I was really going for that soft look. And then that negative fill, that floppy in play, brings a lot of contrast back into her face. And then here we're expecting to have another 2700 Kelvin light actually being our edge light or a rim light, but it's that natural daylight coming through with the 1200D. That is not acting too harsh, but it's pretty soft having the silk flag in front of that. And it's spreading out a bit more, and it's giving us that nice color contrast. And we have like a warm tone here going into the dark, going into blue tone. And that really complements her glasses as well, especially with what she's wearing. Art director, art direction, stylist, everybody killed this in terms of really aligning with what a McDonald's commercial is supposed to look like. And I was really in charge of that, especially with the lighting, but also especially with the camera movements. We have her whipping up, and then we also have the camera whipping up into this next scene, which we are going to be breaking down. This was a really fun one for me because a plan really came into action, and especially with a location that just allows whatever plan you have to come in action as well. So this was shot on the Venice on a 25mm. I like to keep the scenes consistent, especially with the wide shot introducing each of the scenes. So this was shot on the 25mm with a dolly, and this was also shot on a 25mm, but we are using an inverted dolly setup with a Ronin 2 so we can get that whip action. So if you guys want a dedicated video and getting these complex camera movements, please let us know in the comments below. So if we talk about pre-production and having a pre-light as well as location scout, these two rooms are located on top of each other. This was an old Victorian house, and this is the main floor room. And then if we go up to the second level, this room is directly on top of it, and it's supposed to feel like a sunroom. It's actually a bedroom that we had to redeck as a sunroom, as a garden room. This was having a plan in terms of shooting that top of the day and then coming upstairs here and shooting this next, because I had already my lights outside. So if we draw a top-down view of this, we have the same style of room that we were dealing with before, but we have windows here and windows all around here. So outside in this alleyway here, as well as in the back, already had some lights set up. And the light that we used here up on a Mambo combo, because we were on the second floor, was a 1200D. And this is just with the stock reflector on it. So this is 1200D. This is sitting at 75%. And this was blasting all the light back into this room. So this was giving us a very nice pattern on the walls as well as everything that's going on here. And then because this was decked so well, making the full room feel full with the case of all those flowers and plants being there, it was also giving it a lot of nice detail and shaping the lights, spreading it apart and really breaking it up and giving us that natural look. When it comes to commercials and even films, you'll notice that a lot of the windows are blown out. And me as a cinematographer, when I started, I'm like, no, I want to see everything. I have all this dynamic range. I need to lift my room up completely so I can see what's in the background. but it always doesn't look the best. We were shooting into a street and across it was a community center and it wouldn't look good at all. So my objective was to have the windows blown out enough so it looks natural, but not too overexposed where it's just like there's no detail at all. So that's exactly what we did. And that light was doing 90% of the work. But the director brought up like, yeah, this feels very natural and this looks great, but how do we add that McDonald's glow into it? And that goes into the color, the orange that we're going with in here before. And that's what we did with the lights. We need to keep this consistency going here. And the way that we did that is we had a Nanlite Pavo Slim here, but this is the Pavo Slim and this is the 120C. And then I had this set to 2700 Kelvin. And this is the same thing as the F22C, but we had 2 stops of diffusion in front of it with the grid. And then I had it sideways because this is a rectangle one. And it was basically hitting their faces and everything like that. So this is adding that warmth back into the scene, aligning with what the McDonald's colors and how that's supposed to feel. We just have tube lights in play here. I really wanted to showcase what a complicated lighting setup was in terms of the first scene. And then we have the second scene here, which is, it feels like very much the same, but it's only lit with 2 lights. And this is because of what's in the room and what necessarily we have to light. This is a sunroom, so it's supposed to feel nice, bright and airy, primarily lit by the sun, which is our 1200D in this case. And then it goes into how do we add a little bit more? That little extra 10% that gets you 100% there, which is usually wrapping the light with a small panel fixture or something a little softer than just a 1200D or source light like that. And this shot does so well just because of the camera movement, as well as how the room is decked out completely with everything that is aligned, especially in this previous room here. There's so much interest, physical interest and color interest going on here. And I am supplementing that with all the lighting that's going on. And the reason why this shot does so well and all the shots in this piece do well is because of the direction. And it was because of the alignment. This is supposed to feel like a McDonald's commercial. It's supposed to feel fun. It's colorful, airy, and we want some sort of feeling so that the viewer can relate to this. I really related to this story because this is exactly what I did with my grandma, especially with my siblings when I came home after school sometimes. And it really helps aligning with what the brand is supposed to be, what it's supposed to feel like, and what their basically anthem and identity is supposed to do that. So if you can align what the brand is supposed to be and the message that they're trying to send, especially as a director, cinematographer, anybody in key roles when it comes to production, this will put you ahead creating work that will get you hired.